Hey there friends, it's Dylan, your favorite
gold pussy,
and welcome back to my channel. I recently made some videos that garnered an audience that I'm not particularly used to watching my channel, which I'm very grateful for. I don't know how or why YouTube decides to recommend some videos over others. I don't really get it, but like, thanks I guess. These new viewers were all children. I'm talking fresh out of the womb, never known a life without internet. First phone was the iPhone 6 that they got to celebrate their 6th birthday. Their favorite Disney Channel show was Dog with a Blog, that kind of young. I was shocked, gagged, horrified at some of the comments on that video. When I referenced beautiful K-pop artists and showed a clip of Yuri from Girls' Generation on the screen, more than a few people said something to the effect of, "Oh, who's that girl? She's so pretty. Who's the girl at 5 minutes and 42 seconds? She's beautiful." First off, she is, so you have great taste, but second off, how dare you? There are people who claim to be K-pop fans out here that just know BTS and Blackpink, and those groups are so mainstream at this point, I'm sure there are more people than ever intrigued by the world of K-pop. But to fully appreciate how amazing K-pop is in 2019, you must go back and know your K-pop herstory. I myself started falling in love with K-pop in 2010, which was right before K-pop became a thing the whole world was talking about. I just happened to stumble upon a K-pop music video because YouTube recommended it to me. Nowadays, you people know K-pop because when BTS or Blackpink releases something, it's literally headline news and more than likely will break whatever record was set before it. It wasn't like that for me. No one I knew was talking about K-pop. That's actually not true. My two best friends were getting into K-pop at the exact same time, but it was unrelated. We didn't know we were all getting into K-pop. It wasn't until someone's ringtone was and one of us was like, "Bitch, you know SNSD?" And they replied, "Yes, bitch. So wane maragua, motherfucker." And then somebody was like, "Okay, well then you must know about SHINee," which was met with, "Of course I do. Her whisper is the Lucifer, you whore." And the rest is history. But in general, it wasn't a genre of music that many people where I'm from had been exposed to. Even so, thanks to the internet, K-pop was getting bigger and bigger, to the point where labels were taking notes and some were taking action. But now I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's break it down. Now, when I say the golden age of K-pop, I'm referring to roughly the years 2009 through 2015. This period of time might not be your golden age of K-pop, and that's fine, but it's mine, and this is my video.
life's not fair.
Life's not fair, so bitch.
Let me introduce you to the kings and queens of this era. At the very top of the girl group scene, we had Girls' Generation and 2NE1. These two groups were consistently at the top of the charts. Girls' Generation had a bigger hardcore fan base and always outsold 2NE1 physically, to the point where they were competing with male groups in terms of album sales and sometimes beating them, which is still pretty iconic and mostly unheard of. But 2NE1 had a ton of hits and their music seemed to resonate with the general public more so than Girls' Generation, and that was definitely reflected in the digital sales of their music. Because they had two different audiences and occupied two different spots in the marketplace, it's hard to say who was truly #1, but I mean, for me, it was obviously GG. There's no comparison, Hanny. Girls' Generation was often referred to as the nation's girl group, and they definitely made more money than 2NE1. They had so many more tours and advertisement deals and albums in general, just music. They released more music. But many of 2NE1's singles are legendary, and just like there was really no other girl group competing with Girls' Generation in terms of physical sales, there was really no other girl group competing with 2NE1 in terms of digital sales. Therefore, they sit atop the throne. Next in line for that throne, we have the princesses of the golden age of K-pop. These are groups that were definitely very successful and sometimes would even reach the same level of success with a certain release as the queens would, but none of them were consistently as successful as the queens. I'm talking Kara, Sistar, Wonder Girls, FX, 4 Minute, and Tiara. There were many other active girl groups at the time as well, like Secret, who never really made it to that princess level, and also groups like A-Pink and Girls' Day, who eventually did make it to the princess level, but not until later, not until this golden age was kind of over. This era brought us timeless girl group bops, like the entire Pink Tape album. The entire discography of Shoujo Jidai. I could go on and on and on and on and on. I could honestly go on. So let's go on. It also brought us all the groups who reigned supreme during this era.
Supreme. The supreme.
Of our lost supreme.
She is the supreme. So shitty supreme. You're the next supreme. I am, after all, the supreme.
Paved the way for the girl groups you see dominating today. Without 2NE1, there would be no Blackpink. Without Girls' Generation, there would be no Twice.
Case closed, next case.
But even though girls are superior, we can't forget about the boys.
Girls, bring the boys out.
No, I don't mean the iconic single by Girls' Generation, The Boys. I meant like literally males.
With honor and pleasure. Oh, I'm strictly ticklish.
Amen, queen.
Boys, 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 we like boys in cars. Boys, boys, boys.
During this time, the Kings were a little bit more hard to place because different groups seemed to be on top at different times. I think the only male group that was consistently on top during this era was probably Big Bang. And at the beginning of the era, Super Junior was up there with them, but by the end of it, EXO was up there with them. By the very end of this era, EXO's popularity exploded, and they probably had the biggest fan base of any group, male or female. In fact, if you were to average everything out and take into consideration every year of the Golden Age, behind Big Bang might actually be SHINee. Even though they didn't reach the same level of popularity of, say, EXO or Super Junior at their peak, they have consistently been one of the most popular groups. It's like the top shuffled between Big Bang, Super Junior, and EXO, but right behind them was always SHINee, and I mean right behind. So for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna say the Kings were Big Bang, Super Junior, SHINee, and EXO. Other groups that reached peak popularity around this time were 2PM, Infinite, and Beast, now known as Highlight. While groups like BTS, GOT7, and Winner made their debut during this era, they didn't reach their peak popularity until much later. Iconic tracks you need to know from the men of this era are as follows. Now, we know K-pop is not all about the music. K-pop is about a full visual and audio experience. So let's take a moment to focus on those other areas of K-pop we love so much. The fashion during this era was all over the place. Some groups changed up the concept with every single release, while others stuck to a certain aesthetic all the way through. For example, Girls' Generation was known in particular for their cute concepts and their girls next door image. One day they were holding lollipops and pom-poms, the next they were wearing all black and not smiling at all. They would just switch it up visually to match whatever was happening musically. In comparison, 2NE1's music was sonically pretty consistent, and while their fashion definitely evolved throughout their career, it basically just evolved into a more refined version of what they had always done, focusing more on trends and individual styles as opposed to fitting a certain concept. On the other side of the gender pool, Super Junior was basically known for wearing suits, like they wore suits every time. If Super Junior was on stage, there's a 99.9% chance they were all wearing suits. Sometimes they would add color, but nonetheless, 'twas still a suit. And Big Bang very much mirrored their label mates 2NE1, focusing more on trends and individual style. But I've only been talking about stage outfits. Album concepts and photo shoots to go along with those concepts were unpredictable, to say the least. SM Entertainment was the most extra at this time, particularly with album concepts. They also set up EXO's debut with this.
When the skies and the grounds were one the legends, through their 12 forces, nurtured the tree of life.
Yeah, extra. Speaking of SM Entertainment, let's talk about the entertainment companies in general. The most popular groups almost always came from one of the big three. When someone were to reference the big three, they're referring to SM Entertainment, YG Entertainment, and JYP Entertainment. While all three companies are still giants in the K-pop industry today, they're not as giant in comparison as many other companies have produced groups that have matched or even succeeded the popularity of any groups from the big three. Behind the big three, there was Cube Entertainment, which produced the very popular groups Beast and 4 Minute, as well as Hyuna, of course. And TS Entertainment had Secret and BAP, but it seemed as though every other agency was mostly just known for their most popular group. Starship with Sistar, DSP with Kara, Woollim with Infinite, etc, etc. This might be a stretch, but try and stay with me now. If you grew up in North America, it's kind of like how we all had Nickelodeon and Disney Channel on the television, and each of those channels gave us many of the music stars we hear on pop radio still to this day. Disney cranked out Selena Gomez, Miley Cyrus, Demi Lovato, and the Jonas Brothers, which, by the way, can we talk about the Jonas Brothers for a second? Like, I've never even been a Jonas Brothers fan. No tea, no shade. But their new song that came out of nowhere, Sucker, it's a bop. And let us not forget about the one who paved the way for all these hoes, Miss Hilary Duff.
Let the rain fall down and wake my dreams.
Disney Channel definitely gave us quantity, but Nickelodeon, they were more focused on giving us quality. Because, as you all know, they gave us the one and only Miranda Cosgrove.
Sparks fly, it's like electricity.
Electric chair.
I might die.
Oh, and I mean, I guess they also gave us Ariana Grande, like, you know, the most successful pop artist at the moment, like, no big deal. Like, they also gave us her, but like Miranda Cosgrove, that's where it's at, man. I don't know where I was going with that whole analogy, but wherever it took us, I'm sorry. Now that we've covered all the major things that were happening back then, let's talk about what has changed since then. The biggest difference and advantage groups debuting these days have is that the power of the internet is at their disposal from the very beginning. When I first got into K-pop, there wasn't a single artist who had social media. On top of that, the fact that I don't speak Korean and relied solely on translations, it almost felt like these entertainers I loved and looked up to so much weren't even like the same species as me. Today, if you become a fan of a certain group or certain artist, odds are everyone in that group or that solo artist has social media. And if by chance they don't, the amount of fast translations, the amount of memes, the amount of edits that fans come up with these days, like, you'll still feel like you are friends with this person just because there's so much content to enjoy. With how far the internet has come, these companies can focus on gaining an international audience from the very beginning. They can also gauge how much of a demand there is to see every artist worldwide and make touring decisions based on all that information they have at their fingertips from the jump. International fans definitely made their presence known for as long as I can remember, but the sheer amount of international fans that these groups have garnered has just exploded, with the biggest artists selling out worldwide arena tours in just a matter of hours, which was something that happened all across Asia already, but the amount of K-pop artists that have come to tour here in the United States in just the past few years alone seems like a complete fantasy when I look back at how much they didn't come back then. For example, my favorite group, Girls' Generation, who undoubtedly had the most hardcore fans of any girl group at the time, never had a single solo concert outside of Asia. And 2NE1, the second most popular girl group, had only 2, as opposed to today where we saw SM's current top priority girl group, Red Velvet, embark on a multi-city tour throughout North America just this past month. These companies are finally putting all that work into international appeal to good use. And let me tell you, the international fans are appreciating it very much so. It used to be a big deal when a group would make their debut in Japan, but now it's pretty much standard that if a group is successful enough in Korea, their company is going to try and emulate that success in Japan as well. It seems like now the big deal is finding success in the United States. And the crazy thing is, they don't even have to really try. K-pop has always had international appeal because English is very often sprinkled throughout the lyrics, and just music in general is a very universal language. What SM, JYP, and YG had previously tried to do with Girls' Generation, Wonder Girls, and 2NE1 was release English versions of their Korean songs. But the first modern K-pop song to have huge success in the United States was a Gangnam Style, of all songs. A song that is very much Korean. Even the title itself doesn't make sense to most English-speaking audiences, but it was catchy and addictive, and most importantly was accompanied by a ridiculous music video that seemed designed and destined to go viral. Since then, I think companies realized that non-Korean speaking audiences are very open to songs that are not sung in their native language. Regardless of the language, if that beat is dropping, then pussies are popping. Overall, so much has changed in the past few years, and I wanted to make this video for those who weren't there to get a little bit of a history lesson, and for old bitches like me to take a stroll down memory lane. I think regardless of when you discovered K-pop at this point, I think we can all agree it's grown into something a lot of us never could have imagined, and the fact that fans all around the world are getting to see their favorite groups live, in person, in their very own hometown is pretty amazing. But if this reality is all you've ever known, just know, it's the groups and the fans that came before you that paved the way for your faves to even exist. And it's actually you, believe it or not, that will determine where K-pop goes from here on out. Hey, did you enjoy watching this video? If you did, then thank you so much, it means a lot. I've been making videos here on YouTube for years now, but it's only been recently that I really found a certain style that I'm passionate about, and it's become very important to me to make every video the best it can possibly be. But with that comes a lot more time dedicated to each video that I produce. And time? That's not something your boy has a lot of these days. I've been working full-time for a long while now, and my YouTube channel has unfortunately been neglected because of that. So much so, it was to a point where all I was making was reaction videos, which is great. I love reaction videos, and I know that a lot of you guys do as well, but that's not all I want to do. And when I do make reaction videos, I want to make sure that they stand up to everything else I'm making on my channel as well. To me, that means extra research for every release, and really looking into the song and the music video on more than just a surface level, which of course takes so much more time. So after much deliberation about what the next step would be to make all this possible, as of today, I am launching my very own Patreon. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's basically a platform where creators of all backgrounds can offer extra content in exchange for your support financially. In many cases, making content that would not be possible without that support. Now, as a broke bitch myself, I know that not many people can afford to shelf out a bunch of money to all their favorite content creators every month, and in choosing what to offer and for how much on my Patreon, I've definitely kept that in mind. So if you'd like to see more content from me on a regular basis, or even exclusive extra content that nobody else gets to see, then please consider checking out my newly launched Patreon page. And if not, then no worries. Thank you for making it this far into the video, and I hope you look forward to the next one. Until then, goodbye, bitch.